Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. It's been a couple days since I've done a DB Cooper video, and while there's no shortage of material to cover that I haven't yet presented in a video, one thing that is central to this mystery is the role of the FBI. Now, I'll tell you that within the Cooper sphere, many people don't like the FBI. And I think that there are many reasons for that. Certainly, at the time, the FBI was involved in what might be considered a lot of dirty tricks. This was towards the end of the long reign of J. Edgar Hoover. COINTELPRO was going on. This was a chaotic time with the civil rights struggle in Vietnam and terrorism both here and abroad, and of course a number of successful and unsuccessful assassinations of prominent leaders. And then there was Watergate. In the eyes of many people, especially those interested in the D.B. Cooper case, the FBI bungled the investigation. Somehow they couldn't get any usable fingerprints. Somehow they seem to have lost 8 cigarette butts that no doubt have the DNA on them that could conclusively solve this mystery. Many people think that the FBI tried to cover up their failings in the case, and many people believe that the FBI knows who Cooper was but won't admit it because they believe that the FBI is embarrassed that they didn't catch him originally. So, what's the truth? Well, as I try to instill in every one of my videos about D.B. Cooper, the truth is one of those slippery things that we can't all agree on. In my recent experience as being an armchair D.B. Cooper researcher who posts YouTube videos, although I want to make it clear that I am not an expert and I don't see myself as one, but what I encounter in my interactions with people is that very little hard evidence exists, and much of the soft evidence arouses a lot of debate. And by soft evidence, I mean eyewitness accounts of Cooper's appearance and things along those lines. For instance, based on the flight attendant's description, Cooper had darker skin, and it was surmised by them and put into the FBI record that he likely had Mexican or Indian blood or Italian ancestry. Now, of course, if his appearance is as it was described by the flight attendant who sat next to him for 4.5 hours, perhaps he was actually Turkish or Albanian and had darker skin, but wasn't Mexican or Native American or Italian. But I also have many people who argue with me and say Scandinavians can have dark skin that appears to be, say, Mexican or Italian. I don't necessarily disagree with them. I've traveled in Scandinavia, so I think I know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to the Cooper case, and close eyewitness descriptions of the perpetrator's skin color, how do you come to a consensus? You can't seem to. You would think that the weather would be something that would be fairly straightforward, but it's not. I go into great detail on the topic of the weather in the 5th Q&A video that I did, so you can check that one out for more specifics, but the actual weather reports from weather.gov show the high and low temperatures and the rain that fell at various weather stations in the area. It shows Portland, it shows Seattle, it shows a weather station in Cougar, Washington, which is not far from Ariel, Washington, where the FBI originally thought that Cooper jumped. It rained a fair bit that day according to actual databases. If you think for some reason the government is specifically fudging the numbers on that day just to throw off D.B. Cooper researchers, then find yourself some newspapers printed at that time and look for yourself. It was cold and it was rainy. He jumped out at approximately 10,000 feet, and from what I've seen in many places, it was -7 degrees, with the wind chill factor somewhere between -35 and -70 degrees. Many people who comment on my videos want to discount all of that information because it doesn't fit with their narrative that the jump was easier than people think. Many people point out that other people have made a similar jump wearing a business suit from that height. People from Sheridan Peterson to Dan Greider have made that jump. I've seen Dan's video. He jumped out near the Columbia on a fairly beautiful sunny day. That is not at all the conditions from jumping at 8:13 p.m. on an extremely cold, rainy November evening, likely over either mountainous forested area or else the Columbia River. I argue this is like comparing somebody treading water in the ocean off Cabo San Lucas with somebody treading water after the sinking of the Titanic. The temperature of the water in those two instances is so radically different. One is going to succumb to hypothermia probably within a few minutes, and the other one is going to have an enjoyable vacation. What about the tie? Certainly it's nice that the FBI allowed citizen sleuths to examine the tie for particles, but what hard evidence have we gleaned from this? Some confusion over whether the titanium was pure, which was at least the original description that the citizen sleuth said? Or was it a rare titanium antimony alloy, which is what later has been reported? But then it's not even clear if there are more than 3 particles, and if some of it was one and some of it was another variety of titanium. And even if all of us understood the results and agreed on what the results actually said, then what are the conclusions? Some people conclude that there were only 8 people who could have dealt with this particular exotic alloy, while I and other people have argued or pointed out that there were other labs and other people throughout the world who were dealing with this, including the original inventors of this particular alloy, who then tried to patent it using REMCrew as a type of commercial agent. So, here we have a controversial conclusion that is identifying a subject to be an infamous hijacker, when even, assuming the identification of the alloy is correct, the identification of the lab utilizing it may not be entirely correct. So I point out all these things to show that the clues in this case are very difficult for everyone to agree on. When it comes to the FBI, no one can quite agree on them either. Evidently, their file on D.B. Cooper runs to 66 volumes. They've uploaded some of the information, but it doesn't seem that 66 volumes has been uploaded. I've looked through a small portion of the FBI website. It's interesting, there's parts where they white out the names of, say, the flight attendant, whom we all know, yet in other cases it lists not only the name of the suspect who was interviewed, but also their social security number. Now, what is the FBI's conclusion on Cooper? I think officially they believe that the likelihood is he landed in the Columbia River and drowned. In my independent research, without originally reading the FBI's conclusions, that is also what I've concluded. It may be that his chute did not open and he landed in the river and immediately expired and sank. We have plenty of bodies that disappear in the Columbia and are not found. This scenario would explain why his body was never found, and also how some of the money was deposited at some point later in the sand at a location called Tina Bar, where the money was found approximately 9 years later. Now, many people have brought up their argument that if Cooper was likely somebody involved either in high-tech or the aerospace industry, based on what we know is on the tie that he likely was wearing, then why did no one report him missing after the Thanksgiving holiday? I think that's a very valid question on the face of it. However, some people have proposed that the whole reason that Cooper hijacked the plane is because he had been laid off from his job, whether that was at REMCrew or with the Penn Central Railroad or Northwest Orient Airlines. So if Cooper was somebody who either was laid off or else quit their job prior to the hijacking, then obviously there would be no missing person who didn't show up to their job after Thanksgiving. I think in the case of the Somerton man, which has now been conclusively solved in Australia using DNA, none of the guesses that researchers had made over the past 75 years, based on various clues left behind, turned out to be correct. In the end, the man was probably a lonely divorced man who had been trying to track down his ex-wife who had divorced him, and failing to do so, had nothing to live for and decided to go smoke a cigarette on the beach and ingest some poison. In the end, a fairly mundane person. I think if DNA or some other method of identifying Cooper is found, and it is conclusive enough that everyone agrees on the culprit, it will likely turn out not to be any of the main suspects, and most likely will turn out to be somebody that was never on the radar as far as being a suspect. Circling back to the FBI, did they bungle the investigation? I don't know. Certainly some of the things could have been handled better, but we have to remember that these types of investigations may involve many, many people over the years, and things can slip through the cracks. Not far from the area that Cooper was thought to have jumped was the location of the so-called Green River Killer, who was a serial killer in southwest Washington and on occasion in Oregon. It took law enforcement many, many years to solve the case, even though one of the prostitutes that he tried to kill had seen his driver's license and reported his name to the police, who then interviewed him and let him go. Is it because the police were trying to protect him? No. That's just sloppy police work, at least it seems to me. But we have to remember that law enforcement just can't round up anybody they think who's a suspect and then torture them into confessing. We've all heard of cases where innocent people were coerced into inexplicably confessing to a crime they didn't commit. If you're watching this video, then you're probably very interested in the Cooper case. I think ideally we would all love for the FBI to continue to be actively pursuing all leads so that positive identification can be made. But we have to remember that the FBI has a lot on their plate right now. They are the counterintelligence agency that deals with thwarting spies operating in the United States. They deal with many, many pressing ongoing cases. A historic case where the perpetrator likely died on the day of his crime and therefore wasn't going to continue his crime spree is actually something the government should not be spending a lot of resources on. It's not that they've basically closed the books on the case to hide any malfeasance. It's because they need to spend their time and money on existing cases. So ultimately, many people will disagree with me and think that the FBI is either incompetent and or covering up who the true perpetrator is. It's interesting that the same people who don't believe anything that the FBI says because they believe that they're incompetent and corrupt will then believe a book written by an FBI agent stating that Richard Floyd McCoy was D.B. Cooper and accepting the authority of the author because he served in the FBI, so therefore he should know what he's talking about, despite the contradictions in both accepting what a former FBI agent says and discounting everything else the Bureau says. So I think this video will generate a lot of discussion. I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the FBI? Even with dropping the ball here and there, did they make the right call that Cooper perished the night of the jump? Or do you think there's a conspiracy where they're trying to cover up the name of the true suspect to hide their incompetence? Please leave a comment, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps me out. Also, click the like button if you like this video and check out my other videos. I have a lot of them on various other subs. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.